Hello, and welcome to the Surgical Assistant Podcast, a podcast crafted by surgical assistants for surgical assistants, where professionalism meets passion. Welcome to the Surgical Assistant Podcast. As always, I'm John, and with me is Kelly.
Hi, everyone. Welcome tonight. It's good to have you listening.
Hey, Kelly, how are you?
I'm doing great.
Excellent.
Doing well.
Did you have a good holiday?
I did. Had a good
Excellent.
one. I got to cook and stayed around and work and be on call and all that good stuff, but it was good.
Fantastic. And as we're recording this, it's right after Thanksgiving, so we want to wish everybody happy holidays. And we're recording this about a week after Thanksgiving. So anyways,
Going on it. Yep.
this is a really important podcast, something I've been excited to do for a while. And this podcast stems from the last interview we did with David Bartzak at Mediri when we're talking about billing as a surgical assistant. He was
Right.
telling us about some great things that he's seeing in surgical assistant billing. And he told us about a company called All Star Surgical Assist. They're based out of New Jersey. And I think they have a game-changing plan and formula for the profession of surgical assistants. I think this has the potential to revolutionize the practice of surgical assisting. I mean, I can see endless possibilities with this. So we wanted to have them on to talk about it. So we've got Dan and Lou from Surgical Assist, and I'm going to kick it off to Dan, and he can tell us a little bit about himself, and then we'll go to Lou, and then we'll get into some questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We wholeheartedly believe that our company is changing the paradigm in first assisting across the board, and we're so excited to be on your podcast. My name is Dan Payson. I'm the CEO of All Star Surgical Assist.
Wonderful.
My name is Lou McGrone. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer of All Star Surgical Assist. And yeah, I think it's important to know that Danny and I both have clinical backgrounds. Myself as a physical therapist, and Danny could get into his background in a little bit, but we've treated patients, and then we both transitioned to medical device roles, and I've been in thousands of cases. So I think understanding the OR dynamics has been helpful in terms of gaining the trust of surgical assistants all over the country. But yeah, we just are grateful to be here and to share our story, and hopefully we can do something really positive for assistants and for patients around the country.
Yeah, I want to jump in and say, first of all, welcome, gentlemen. We are so excited to have you. I feel a little cutting edge here, John. I feel like we're on the brink of bringing breaking news to the first assistant world. And really primarily because we see such a predominance of this discussion on our social media platforms from surgical first assistants everywhere that have, first assistants that have been independent, that want to be independent. There's so many questions and so many facets of that. And I do see a lot of discussion, a lot of question about that online. And David Bartzak has been extremely helpful in bringing us information and providing information to our entire professional community on this subject. And I'm very ignorant about a lot of it still and how it works, but we were so excited to hear about your company. I think I first caught a whiff of it online as David kind of announced your business and that it was really gonna help a lot of independent first assistants. And so then we, as John has mentioned, we subsequently interviewed David again, and he went into a little more detail. So I do want to mention to our listeners, John, that there is an episode that we've already launched that gives a lot of baseline information about what we're going to talk about, but we're going to get to the actual nuts and bolts from the guys who started this company, and we're going to hear it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. And we've got all kind of questions lined up. And so I did want to just give that background before we jumped in to let the listener know what we're going to be talking about. You will want to listen to this. There's going to be so much great information. I'm excited personally what I can learn from you guys and the possibilities that I might have to expand my practice and to continue doing what I do, maybe in a different way and maybe getting paid more for it. So that's exciting to everyone. So I just wanted to jump off the bat and say that I might not talk anymore during this because I'm going to do a lot of listening. So John's formulated some really great questions for you guys. And I know that you're going to be able to cover point A to Z with us tonight.
Great. Kelly, thanks so much for saying that, because I had all the stuff I wanted to say, and then as usual, when I hit record, I get nervous and it goes right out of my head. But yeah, we have started a series with David and on surgical billing, and it's a recurring series. He's kind enough to offer his time, and he wants to be available to answer questions for surgical assistants when it comes to surgical billing because he's been doing it a long time, has a great company. And then ever since he told us about you guys, we wanted to get you on to talk about it because I think it's a game changer for surgical assistants. And I know you guys had offered, I don't want to give out any spoiler alerts, but you guys have maybe offered some of your time to do a recurrent guests on our podcast to give out this information. So we're excited to have that. So I guess we'll start right off the bat with you, Lou. And how did you come up with the idea for this company? And would you want to tell us a little bit about your program?
Yeah, so having been in medical device in New York City, was able to get close to a lot of residents and fellows, and then see how their practices branched out. And you would hear some of them would have access to great first assists, or maybe they would have a good first assist at one location, but when they went to a secondary or tertiary location or an ASC, they wouldn't have a good set of hands. That affects a young surgeon and their confidence and their ability to do these cases. We also started to hear about surgeons being concerned about paying for these first assists and their billing and collecting on it, and what their ROI would be. And are they busy enough to afford this out of the gate, or do they have to get a couple of years experience? So we started to see a couple of our docs that Danny and I were friendly with that kind of use some independent first assists, and they would bring them into the case, and there was a fee arrangement, and the doc would bill for them, and the assist would get paid. So we decided, with our background in nationally in medical devices and just from our professions, that is this something we could do nationally? And my, oh my, were we surprised. Like, we thought there'd be some interest, but it's absolutely
I bet.
blowing up. And
I bet.
and I think there's so many people that want to be independent. People want to determine and dictate their hours of work or their days of work. They want that, I guess, just power. But the biggest barrier was the insurance companies and what to get when you went to battle with them, when you were trying to collect. And why do you get $50 one day and 500 the next? And what's going on? And how do you have a predictable income, right? So that's all the stuff we thought about. And that's how we came up with our little secret sauce that we'll explain, that came into All Stars. But it was helping first docs and first assists come together. It was alleviating the high hurdle of how to deal with an insurance company, and it was cash flow. And I think those are a couple of our main ingredients.
Wonderful. Thanks. Dan, do you have anything to add to that?
Lou and I do tons of calls
Okay.
together. It's exactly what I would have said. Great job, Lou.
That's wonderful. Yeah, there's so much misinformation on there on surgical assistant billing. And I know that when I wanted to do that, when I was looking at being independent, David Bartzak, I could just cannot say enough good stuff about it because he's always generous with his time and his knowledge. He doesn't hold his cards close to the vest. And I told him what I was thinking about doing, and I hadn't even begun to scratch the surface. I mean, I didn't know there was a whole realm of questions I didn't even think to ask that I needed to ask before I even found out about being independent. And as an independent surgical assistant, that you're the only person in that room that's not knowing what they're going to get paid that day. If you're employed by the hospital, you know what your salary is. You can kind of calculate what you make per hour, per week, per month, whatever. But if you're independent and you're billing for an existence, you don't know from day to day what you're making, and you're doing a lot of cases for free. So I just think your program, the way David talked to us about it and mentioned a little bit in our podcast, I think that's going to be a game changer for everybody. And I mentioned it to you, and I've said it so many times, but it's what I think of since I've talked to you guys and learned a little more about what you do, is that a rising tide raises all boats. Because I mean, it's going to help surgical assistants have a quality of life and a good work-life balance. It's going to help provide quality surgical assistants to surgeons that need them, that maybe can't get them because for whatever reason they don't have access to a surgical assistant. I think this will grow the profession by leaps and bounds. So, you guys want to start telling us a little bit about your program and how it works?
Yeah, it's really morphed from what we thought the initial idea would be for All Stars to kind of the different avenues now that providers engage with us. So what we started, like Lou kind of mentioned before, we thought we'd be a matchmaking service, really. We
Mhm.
find that providers that work full-time jobs on their days off, place them with surgeons that we know in our network. And while we do that, the largest segment of our business is providers that have already have established first assist businesses. They're getting crushed by reimbursements, clawbacks from insurance companies, the variability in payment. They get introduced to us, and it's a no-brainer to come on board and join. We stabilize the payment piece, like Lou said, and we just facilitate the ability to help them grow their business. So that's really what we've morphed into, is helping First Assist providers start and run their own First Assist business from soup to nuts on the back end. We want providers to focus on what they do best, and that's being in the operating room and assisting surgeons. Even though Lou and I have clinical degrees out the wazoo, neither of them are relevant to first assisting in the operating room, and that's not where we honed our skills. Our skills were honed growing medical accounts and then doing the back end stuff like billing, collecting, and negotiating with insurance companies. We've even expanded to where facilities are reaching out to us to help find them first assist and employ our model. Because again, for them, everything is about efficiency and cost effectiveness. If we can place providers that are virtually independent, meaning that they're billing and collecting on their own, where the center does not have to pay them even a stipend up front, it's really a no-brainer for them, again, to outsource their first assisting to All Stars.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Kelly, do you have any questions you want to add or anything you'd like to bring up?
No, I can't think of anything right off the bat. I had a question a second ago, and I said, well, I don't want to jump ahead. Now I can't
If
remember what it was. So we'll
interrupt
get to it,
is
or I'll just butt
Yeah.
in and let you know what it is.
Yeah, I think one thing Danny was
Mhm.
mentioning is that, like, look, we want to provide the back end support. So we're helping providers get credentialed at facilities, right? Where we're using our people to take those hours of pain away from you as you're trying to grow your business. We're
Mhm.
also reaching out to local relationships, whether that's docs, ASCs, medical device reps. Once we partner with someone in that area, saying, "Hey, we actually have a really good person in this city, and they could probably get 2 or 3 more of their assist buddies, and they're really good at ortho and general surgery, and how can we help them get introductions and meet surgeons and meet hospitals and meet so that they can grow their business," right? And Danny and I, we've done 50 something flights this year, and
Mm.
we're going and meeting these providers face to face and showing them that we care and getting hopefully the right people in the room. This week, Danny's going to Detroit and meeting with a couple docs, like 2 or 3 docs, 4 or 5 PAs. The docs own multiple ASCs. They want to start with one and then bring us elsewhere. I'm heading up to Massachusetts to go meet with the CEO of a big orthopedic practice. So we enjoy the FaceTime, and all we want to do is support and help grow, help market, help education. I think those are all key components, because I think regionally there's just different things going on, and so we're trying to learn all that and pay attention to that, and meet with successful people like yourselves to partner in the right way for that area.
And I think with All Stars, what makes us very different from your average company is that we are a medical practice by formation. So All Star Surgical Assist itself is 100% physician owned. We obviously manage the complete operations of it, but by being physician owned, this is kind of our special sauce in the ability to bill, collect, and negotiate with these insurance companies,
Mhm.
because instead of billing as a independent solo practice provider that could do 400 OBGYN cases a year, but you're still negotiating as one single provider. We're negotiating with our full boat of providers and full amount of cases that we do, and we do quite a bit of cases. So our negotiating power is really strong.
Great. Thank you for that. And I noticed I was saying program, but I think model is a much better term. So, well, let's say somebody's brand new and they came to you and they're like, how can you guys help me? Do you want to explain your model and how it works and what's required by the surgical assistant to work with you guys and what you need from them?
You're referring to brand new provider as in they're actively working or right out of school?
Or a brand new provider to you, let's say. Maybe they've been working for a little bit, in both. I mean,
Somebody
you could
like me,
approach
let's
them
just
both.
take me for example.
Yeah,
There you
I've been
go.
a first assistant for almost 13 years. I'm well-rounded in my experience, et cetera, et cetera. So if I came to you and said, I'm ready to jump in and look at this, how would you counsel me to start? And if I had questions like, what does this look like on paper? I did want to throw this out there. There are large staffing companies I don't want to really say any names, but staffing companies that employ first assistants and staff them into hospitals who, need first assistants. So I could go to work with company A over here, and they could send me to different hospitals in my area that they're contracted with. So that company is contracted with these different facilities, and I could go to work for them for an hourly rate, and they staff me to different hospitals. I do cases, and I work for them. They pay me, and then they get paid. However, how does your system differ from that?
I'll let Lou take you're a new provider with us and walk through that piece. But just to be, again, you bring up a really valid point with this staffing company. We are unequivocally not a staffing company.
Okay. So I wanted to, all
So
right. So, yeah.
yeah, it's we act in like three different buckets, right? We act as a billing entity. While we do some staffing by nature, we're ultimately kind of the middleman, and it's not necessarily providing full-time staff,
Okay.
but and the reason is a staffing company can't bill because we're a medical practice and physician owned. We're essentially
Mhm.
billing. That alleviates the big thing with a staffing company is how does a staffing company make money? The hospital or the facility has to pay the staffing company, and they ultimately then pay the provider. So
Okay.
there's somebody taking little bits here and there from what should be going in your pocket. What essentially we're allowing you to do is you're going to do the same thing, utilize your relationships in your geography. So if you've been at a hospital for 13 years or a group of surgeons, that's the easiest group to go after to start because that's where you have relationships. And ultimately, we let you work with the same providers that you've been working with, just in an independent capacity where you're controlling your schedule. We're helping facilitate the back end and giving you a payment either for the day or for the case.
Okay.
And I'll let Lou kind of dive in on our onboarding process, but functionally that's the big separation between us and a staffing company.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So typical call would say, hey, I either already have some existing book of business or I've been discussing with my surgeon about going independent, and I believe I provide so much value that they're going to go to bat for me with the institution. So you could say, hey, I'm doing 5 ortho cases a week, but I can't live off of that. And that was like my side hustle. But I think if I get this group, I could do it. My volume will increase. And then they'll come to us and say, how do I engage that group?
Mhm.
Who do I talk to? What do I have to say? Is there a contract, right? We help with formulating all that. But ultimately, I would say, hey, to onboard with us, since we are a medical practice, we have to be supervisory in hiring of you. So we ask for CV, we ask for licensure, any kind of stuff that you would provide the state in order to get licensed and credentialed. We then perform a background check on you. I joke around just to make sure that you didn't commit 10 felonies last week and that you're in good standing with the hospitals and the states that you work with. We ask for a couple references. So this way, you're telling me, hey, I scrub ortho cases, and then we start partnering with you on ortho cases, and you've never been in an ortho case ever. That would be good, right? So it's there is a little bit of legwork to get up and running with us, but it shouldn't be crazy laborious. A lot of the providers have Google Drive or Dropbox of the documentation that we need, and the background check takes a couple days, and then we have an agreement that's pretty basic that allows you guys to be independent at this point, where it just outlines what we're paying either by the case or by the day. It's a flat rate. At this point, we pay weekly. So that's a huge
Mhm.
selling point. In that agreement, you'll see how much you're getting. We typically break it down by a few categories. Arguably they would be general, orthopedics, brain and spine, and sometimes some different plastics, or there are outliers, right? So you would know what we're agreeing to pay. Some of that's done by region or certain factors that we've just hired this data from being in 22 states. And then we pay 100% of the time. And that's the number one deal clincher is that, hey, you're getting paid a week from when you get us the op notes. And we have our own proprietary app. So that's super easy and user friendly. You get paid a week later and you know what it is, and you get paid 100% of the time. You're not waiting 2 months, 6 months. You don't have to deal with the clawbacks. You don't have to deal with the variety of payments. You don't have to wait on appeals. And it's really allowed people to have super predictable incomes. And a quick story from this week was that one provider mentioned that he had an elderly relative concerned about, and he needed over this Thanksgiving break to get there and visit them and figure out what's going on with their living situation. And he had just started with us about a month ago. And he said, without All Stars, I would have had to dip into funds that were earmarked for other things that
Mm.
really I don't want to touch ever, but I had to go take care of this relative. But because of our relationship and arrangement, I now have the funds to go visit that person. And that was like
Mm.
not something you think about with
Mm.
somebody. We were thinking about
Right.
to break it down to that individual level and know that we affected him, and he traveled over Thanksgiving weekend and handled that situation and wasn't sweating a bucks here or there or whatever it was. Things like that mean you and I, and it's just it's great. It's been amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I don't think it's hyperbole to say that I think it is a game changer. And you brought up a good thing I didn't want to interrupt earlier, but when you brought it up is like there are many people like Kelly who have a number of years experience. They maybe work for a hospital somewhere and they've built up a great reputation. They're excellent surgical assistants. The surgeons there rely on them heavily and they are employed by a hospital. And unfortunately, they can't be independent because like you just said, what you said about your new recent acquisition of a surgical assistant, that without All Stars, he would not have been able to do that because you couldn't as an independent. You couldn't go independent because you don't know you're going to fight with insurance companies and it's going to take. And David is great, and Mediri is a wonderful company, and they are excellent at in reimbursements. I have a friend that was doing his own billing for years, and when he switched to Mediri, he said my accounts receivable went up 25% or more just because David has cracked the code on dealing with the constant back and forth with the insurance companies. But I think you guys have cracked the code on something that I think has a potential to grow this profession by leaps and bounds. And I don't think it's hyperbole to say that. I think that's actually an understatement. But so I noticed you mentioned that you guys have different fee categories for different surgical categories. And you mentioned a little bit about in what you were talking about, Lou. So what is a surgical assistant required to give you so that they can like give you the op note and probably a copy of the face sheet, and then if it's a commercial insurance and you guys approve it, then once they submit it to you, you said they're getting paid weekly. Once they submit that to you, like they can expect the payment to hit their bank account in 7 to 10 days.
7 days.
Oh
So
my
five,
god!
5 business days. So it's one of the big things we heard about when we were starting this company was, and it's anyone that's ever tried to bill insurance, is there's no transparency with the insurance company. Sometimes they pay,
Right.
sometimes they don't. Sometimes they find some arbitrary rule to not pay you. So when we set out to
Yep.
start All Stars, we made it our mission not to hem everybody up with a ton of bureaucracy. If you know anything about sales reps, we're not big bureaucracy guys. So we modeled this after what Lou and I either dealt with A as providers, but B, what we enjoyed about being in sales is that I don't like a lot of bureaucracy. So in the app that we created, it's a submission app basically.
Mhm.
You on either on the fly or from your home computer. It's a web-based application that allows you to upload cases. As soon as you upload it, it's tagged with exactly what we pay. We do need the op note, the face sheet, and we've now been asking for the insurance card. Again, as much information as you as the provider can gather, depending on your relationship with the hospital, you'd still hunt down your own stuff. You could upload it on the go to the app. It's HIPAA compliant on a HIPAA compliant AWS server, two-factor authentication to log in. It was built here in the US by an awesome developer out of Arizona who specializes in security. The thing is, he likes to say it's more secure than Gmail. Take that with he's an awesome guy. So we really wanted to make it transparent. So after you upload all your cases, what essentially gets created is a case log that has exactly what you're going to get paid. We pay every Monday. It's kind of how it looks. It takes about 5 days, depending on the bank holiday, to deposit in your account, and the money is there. And we have a full team, back end people supporting the app and supporting the pay piece. So we always have somebody to reach out to. If it's an app issue, reach out to right to the developer. If it's a question on what's accepted and what's not, it's right in the app. Why a case either was or wasn't accepted and how much you're going to get for it. Because we negotiate in the contract, we upload that information to the system, and the same stuff that any provider would need to bill or any hospital would bill on your behalf is exactly what we need.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Kelly. Anything you want to add?
One thing, as I'm listening to you, I'm sitting here thinking about maybe a good description of a person that this situation would be a good fit for. And one thing that comes to mind is having the ability, I would think networking would be a huge, I mean, for the first assistant, I mean, networking would be a huge of something that would be helpful. Like if I'm sitting here thinking, could I do this? The more people, the more surgeons you know that you could go to and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Would you utilize me? I would think that would plays a big role in from the first assistant's perspective.
100%. I think it's even beyond that. I think, and I don't know how much Lou thought about this when he was practicing clinically, but I often thought about, like, you don't have that sales mentality until you kind of have to do it every day. But a sales mentor of mine used to say, what's the worst anybody can say? It's no. I think people
Yeah.
underestimate not just having to network, but everyone has a network around them.
Yeah.
If you work in a hospital, you come in
Yep.
contact with, beyond the doctors in the practice, if you have a residency program, if you
Mm.
program in your hospital, how
Good point.
every like people across the country, you just
Right.
haven't yet thought about how to tap
That's
all of that.
true.
And
Yeah.
the relationships that providers have with other providers is that a regular salesperson will never have. No matter how many lunches or dinners we could take doctors out, I'm not standing in the field of battle with them for a challenging case and getting them through that. It's that type of relationship that first assists build with their surgeons, that, hey, I'm starting my own side thing. Do you go to any surgery centers that I can work with you at, that I don't work with you here already? And you don't need to pay me. I can bill on my own. That's a very light, not so challenging in terms of like the back and forth conversation. And I'll let Lou kind of deep dive into. We obviously look for not just what providers would be a good fit within All Stars, but what doctors to kind of approach and how to approach them. We really kind of created a systematic way of thinking about it that Lou kind of spearheaded. Like, the last thing I'll leave you with before I kick it to Lou is that everybody has these relationships already. And as soon as we have these conversations, most providers are like, oh, used to work with this guy. He went to another hospital. Yes, he told me he doesn't have an assist at that hospital. That's the lowest of low hanging fruit. The doctor,
Right.
you maybe even
Yeah,
have
right.
your privilege
Right
at
there
the
in front of you.
hospital already. It's a
Mhm.
matter of saying, hey, on Tuesdays, can I come help you? You don't have to pay me. I'll bill on my own.
Right. Okay, and before you jump in, I do want to throw this out here because I'm trying to put myself in the mind of the listener and like the listener that's listening right now and has questions. So I want to say, is it as simple as this? This is being a independent surgical first assistant, making my own schedule, working with the surgeons that I want to work with without the headache of going through the billing process and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for reimbursement. Is it as simple as that?
Yes, that's simple. And I think,
Wow.
what Danny said is
Uh,
it's powerful, is that you guys have the keys to the success of your own independent practice in your phone, because you
Mhm.
have their
Wow.
phone numbers, a lot of these providers. We
Yeah.
don't have that. We could try to send some reps to scour the area for you. We can look in our Rolodex. We have a CRM now and what's going on in what states, and we have CEOs, we have doctors, we have all kinds of practitioners, right? And we'll help. But like Danny said, the easiest one is to say, hey, I remember when you were, hi, this is John, this is Kelly. I remember when you were a resident or a fellow at this place. I just want to let you know we're starting my own first assist business. I had a great time when I scrubbed with you. If you can keep me in mind, just let me know. I would appreciate that. They write back every time. I tell you, as
Wow.
a sales rep, you're used to getting the Heisman, and they have to push us away sometimes. We're trying to sell them some more biologics. But
Right.
like Danny said, you're their partner, and they're going to respect your skills, and they want to always keep that door open. And then sometimes the conversation evolves, and you say, hey, if you're all set, you're all set. That's great. But sometimes people go out on maternity leave. Sometimes people leave practices, and we've been able to get first assist like an in on some of those just circumstances and life things that happen. We got a call last week from a doc. Next thing you know, it was a PA. The doc called the PA in this situation and said, hey, can you help me? And he said, I'd love to, but I want to do it through All Stars, and I don't know what your practice needs with All Stars. I was on the phone with the doc that night. I was on with the CEO the next morning. They wanted a little bit of paperwork back and forth. We have a bunch of different contracts for practices and hospitals, but it all came from the relationship of the good work that clinician did in the clinic.
Mm-hmm.
Recognized, and people were reaching out to him, and I would bet most of the listeners have,
Mm-hmm.
have similar relationships. It's just like Danny said, it's just training your mind to maybe approach them a little bit differently.
Okay. And so a
Great.
couple of necessary things that need to be in place for someone to do this is you have to go into a facility to work independently with a surgeon, you have to be credentialed with said facility. Would that be accurate?
Yes.
So there would need to be a credentialing process. So as a first assistant, we're responsible for setting ourselves up for that. Would that be true? We kind of need to get that ball rolling on our end.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely helpful since you're boots on the ground and you can find the credentialing specialist. But,
Mm-hmm.
in whether you're an LSA, CSFA, RNFA, PA, or NP, the facility has a credentialing person, and your requirements for getting approved may rely on the physician you're working with, either going to bat for you or signing a form in the PA
Okay.
case. And additionally, you'll obviously need to set up a practice, which again is something unique that we specialize in. Is how do you do that? This is your own independent business. So while I bill under you as the provider, ultimately, um, you need medical malpractice insurance independently, and a lot of independent providers have an LLC that they engage either with the facility or with us in terms of payment and whatnot. And obviously that gives you some liability coverage, but it's the true business. There are business related expenses like getting credentialed and getting your own malpractice, although getting credentialed is a one-time an annual fee, not crazy expensive. Medical malpractice insurance, we have a relationship with a malpractice provider who, again, it's sub, I don't know, let's say 1,500 annually for malpractice. That'll literally be 2 cases. After doing 2
Right.
cases, you have that all covered. So there are things to kind of set up, but the barrier to entry initially is very low. There's always a credentialing specialist.
Mhm.
Again, we're also your back end support. Like if you're having trouble finding that person, you reach out to us, say, "Hey, can you help locate the right person?" And I'll have our clinical team give a call over there, kind of explain the situation and see if we can't help get you credentialed. And
Okay.
again, if you're approaching the physician and the physician's like, "Yeah, I'd love to have you," you're like, "Okay, great. What's the next step?" And
Mhm.
usually it's like, "Hey, I know the OR manager who will then put you in contact with a credentialing specialist."
Okay. That
Great.
makes sense.
I want to just chime in here if I can. So the way I understand it, then some of the things that are required for this, for your model to work or for this, and I think this is fantastic because there's so much misinformation out there about surgical assistant and billing. I mean, I travel for a living and I go to many different facilities. And if I've heard it once, I've heard it 100 times from the surgical assistants in insert whatever state you want. Oh, we can't bill for insurance. We can't bill insurance in this state as a surgical assistant. And I'm like, well, no, you're wrong. You can, but you won't get paid. And it sounds like you guys have solved the problem on that. So, number one, you need to be a certified surgical first assistant with a certification, whether it's CSA, CSFA, SA-C, RNFA, NP, or a PA. Then you have to have an NPI number, which all you have to do is apply for once you become a surgical assistant. You can do
Yeah.
that. And then you have to be credentialed at a facility. So the way I've understand it, I've gone through that a few times. Once with a group, you have to have a physician sponsor you for privileges. They have a form that details every procedure you're allowed to do, everything you're allowed to do, whether you're allowed to close fascia, close skin, whatever, insert trocars, do this. Literally everything you're going to do on your day to day has to be listed on that form. That gets signed, submitted to, it goes in front of a credentialing committee, and they talk about it. And when they grant you privileges, you're accepted onto the medical staff. And there, like you said, there is a fee for that. But with that fee usually comes other things like the entrance to the doctor's lounge, parking, things like that, that is beneficial to us as surgical assistants. And then some of the other things you said that are required is an LLC. So, and then your app and your phone. And then is there, I assume, and you might have mentioned it, Lou, and I apologize if I ran over it, but is there an application process for your company? Is there like a typical application that we have to fill out to be an asset for surgical all-star surgical assistant? You said you required a CV And what else do you guys require?
Your licensure, and I'll let the app actually does it all for you.
Hmm.
You enter in your
Okay.
NPI, you're entering your name, you enter in your if you have a
Yeah.
license, part of your license, you enter all the there's a section for your CV, there's a section for your certification or your license
Yeah.
or your state license, and for your medical malpractice right in the app.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he did
And
mention, John, that the background check and couple references and that kind of
thank
thing. So
you.
he did mention that just a few
Thank you.
minutes ago. Yeah.
And then now that brings up another question now. I think licensure is in 7 states, or licensure or registration. Does your model work in all 50 states, or are there states that it doesn't work in? And is it easier or worse if you're licensed? I would think it would be beneficial if you're in a state that has licensure like Texas, Virginia, or Tennessee.
Licensing, I'll take the easy one. Licensing is always more advantageous. Any licensure definitely gives your bona fides to bill insurance and allows us to a little harder. Not saying that we can't do this with CSFAs. There are some states do have caveats in that, but again, our job is obviously to make this work with everybody, and we figure out a way to get it done. As far as the states go, that's an interesting question. There are states that are more friendly, and there are states that are not so friendly.
Okay. Because I know there's certain states that don't recognize us, such as New York, California.
New Jersey, where we live.
Oh,
ironically.
Jersey.
Mhm.
Okay. All right.
But I would say yes. Typically, New York and California are tougher states.
Tougher, yeah.
The other 48, I would say, super excited to speak to people from those states. I mean,
Yeah.
well,
Okay.
we probably can work with you.
Or even in Hawaii. So it's
Yeah.
Right.
It's not, like
Okay.
there are more than not we can work in that state. And again, it's the same. If your credential is allowable in whatever state you're working in,
That's what I was. Yeah. If you're
we
if
will
you're a
work with
credentialed
you.
first assistant and you're employed as
You're-
in the role of
no
a first
problem.
assistant, you're good to
So,
go. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Easy
Great.
yes on our part. Yep.
And then I have a quick self-serving question then. So speaking of licensure, so like I am licensed in Virginia, but that's not going to do me any good if I decide to live in Florida and work as a first assistant, right? Even though I'm technically licensed, so it has to be applicable to that state for it to be beneficial with the billing process.
Yes, but remember, there's a reason we ask for the CV.
Mhm.
We have a very special way of negotiating with insurance companies, and we use your CV, yes, obviously as an employment thing, but as
Mhm.
a negotiation tactic. The more education you have, the more experience you have in your subspecialty, we advocate your years of experience. If you were a foreign MD and you came here, we advocate for that level of experience. If you've been working in robotic surgery for 13 years, we use that as a leverage piece to negotiate with. It's really why we ask. Everyone's like, why do you ask for the CV? That's really why the CV is vital to us. So any extra letters after your name never hurt. Any publications that you've been a part of, the fact that you train other providers, all of that aids in our ability to say that you were an expert first assistant, that your level of expertise was required for that case.
Okay.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Let's see if I have any more questions off the top of my head. Kelly, you have anything else you want to add?
Are there cases that do you have a list of cases, or is there a guide of sorts for the first assistant that maybe I'm just going to throw out an example? If the surgeon says, "Hey, you've been here, I've helped with maybe a couple of complicated robotic cases," and he says, "I've got a port to put in." Are there cases that you say, "Well, we really can't justify a first assistant being on that case, or we can't really submit a bill"? Are there any caveats like that?
We don't so believe it or not, CMS created a rule set on this exact thing. So CMS assigns every CPT code a number. You're either a 2, a 1, or a 0. The number signifies that code and its relationship to the first assist. If you're a 2, it's an always allowable. So you think spine procedures, total knees, shoulders,
C-sections.
C-sections, hysterectomies,
Okay.
colectomies, all of those, most robotic cases fall in that 2 category. So those we take. Then you have your zeros, which is kind of nuanced. There's 2 governing agencies regarding what a 0 requires or what it doesn't require. The point is, a 0 essentially says that an assist was required, but needs kind of medical language in the op note to state why you were exactly needed in that. So some things that fall into a 2 would be, a 1 a 0. Wow. Would be like some knee scopes fall into that 0
Right.
category. Some smaller procedures at the get, but can become larger ones. So like you think
Mhm.
like the knee arthroscopy codes, there's 4 of them. They vary between a 1 and a 0. But ultimately, if your surgeon can back up why you were needed, they had arthritis, you had to have two-handed retraction, extra suction, patient safety, whatever they put in that note will aid us in accepting those zeros. So our system, SurgiCase, which is the name of our app, it'll kind of filter and hold stuff back and let us know, hey, a 0 code was submitted, and we'll go and look through the app note. And then we need an addendum, we'll ask you for it. And then ones basically are like codes that aren't reimbursable for a first assist. So I don't know off the top of my head the code for a port, but skin lesion removal is
Right.
a 1. I think
So
a
some of
lot of
those are no-brainers, but I would think that you would provide some support, and we're responsible as well for knowing
the
those
app
things and
will
maybe for
know.
learning as we go. The app will
Yep.
know.
The app will know,
So,
and it won't let
okay.
you submit something I don't.
Okay.
And to that effect, you could. Still to this day, and we have like 250 some odd providers across the country. uh, Most of them have my or Lou's cell phone number, so people text me, "Hey, do you
Right.
take 299 whatever?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I take that one." Or, "Hey, make sure that your doctor puts an extra note in that one." Or, "No, you know what? That's a little too small. CMS doesn't reimburse for that code." So
Mm.
obviously, there's nothing I can do on that. So beyond the app won't let you. The app will also tell you why it's not accepting it. And most providers ask. Same thing with insurance. Some
Right.
insurances can be really weird. We take like 95% of commercial insurances, but things can be really funky. Hospitals can label things weird. A lot of providers either will show in the app like, "Hey, can you look at this face sheet and let me know what you think?" Or they'll text me like, "Hey, do you take this particular carrier?" And generally speaking, it's a simple 2-second yes or
Mm.
not. Like very little do I have to like do deep dive research into it. It's easy enough to tell on our end.
So one
And
of the big burning questions for first assistant specifically versus the PA or nurse practitioner first assistant is the ability to bill CMS or the government-based insurances. Is that would that be a thing that we would need to market ourselves to patients that had commercial insurance as first assistants that are not non-PA or non-nurse first assistants?
So Medicare, obviously, there's only 2 providers, generally speaking. There's some depends on your geography and when you
Okay.
got into this and when you approached those federal carriers. If
o-
CSFAs can bill, I've heard of 2 in the
Okay.
West Coast state that can bill like and bill Medicare. It's the only person I've ever heard, but she's been doing this for 30 some odd years. She got in really
Okay.
early. As of right now, blanket, beyond the fact that Allstars does not take federal insurers, Medicare, Medicaid, TRICARE, TriWest, those type of insurances,
Okay.
non-masters level providers. So PAs and NPs are right now the only 2 subsets of providers that can bill Medicare or even Medicaid for that matter, or Medicare Advantage. So we only accept, I mean, convenient, I guess, for CSFAs. We don't take Medicare either, so there's nothing to market
Okay.
there. But
how is that? Look, there are many institutions that will pay a stipend on the government cases or
Okay.
will allow you to bill the patient and then
Sure.
it's agreed upon rate. Surgeon says, hey, this is my first assist. They've been by my side for 20 years. They get X amount of hundreds of dollars for this case. And they let them know up front. Or there's other arrangements too, where I've heard where sometimes the practice will then pay that first assist on that Medicare because that will help them do more cases that day. So I think yes, All Stars will take all the commercial cases. Obviously, the PAs and the NPs that will bill Medicare and Medicaid directly. The other providers, that's where we partner and we help you and try to explain that there's a couple other ways to make sure that you're getting some money for those cases. Maybe not
Okay.
what you're getting for the commercial cases, But hey, I tell people it's beer money, it's pizza money, it's gas money, right? And everybody needs that stuff. So I think that's all in the conversations. And like Danny said, so many providers have our numbers. We get texts all day. Hey, do you take this? Why did the app flag this case? What's going on? So
Mhm.
it's truly a partnership in that way.
Okay.
So then,
That's a
if I
great
was
question.
that is a great question. And to dovetail with that, let's say, just as an example, a surgical first assistant working in Anytown, USA, at Anytown Hospital. If I want to do this model, if I want to go with your company and use your model, I should take a look, start looking at the face sheet of the cases I'm doing and see if there's
Mhm.
a really favorable mix of commercial insurance. And
Yes.
I hope I'm not speaking out of school by asking this, but I know that you had offered that in a conversation we had had to maybe come on and be a reoccurring guest on our podcast. Maybe we can talk about how to show surgical assistants how to set up an LLC, how do you approach the credentialing committee, and then how to get started as a first assistant and how to have your own business. I know if that's something you guys are willing to do, we would love to have that. I think because I think you
Sure.
guys, if this model continues to work, I think it'll cause an explosion in our profession, and there'll be a lot more surgical assistants. People will be getting paid what they're worth, and surgeons will get the assistants that they trust, and then surgeons who haven't been able to get surgical assistants because maybe the majority of their cases are Medicare patients, like podiatrists or whatever. That now they can have a surgical first assistant because maybe through you guys, you showed us how to approach the hospital and negotiate a stipend or whatever. I think that if that's I think that's fantastic if you guys are willing to be a recurring guest on here and talk to our listeners and show us how
We'd
to
love
do
to.
these things. Because
Absolutely would love to.
I've been excited since we first talked about it. As we introduced it, David dropped it on our podcast that what you guys were doing. I was anxious to talk with you guys, and then Dan, after you and I talked, I was like, I was just in a daze for a couple of days because I could see the potential for this. It's amazing. I mean, I love what I do, and I've had certain surgeons that I love working, and I flat out asked the surgeon, I was like, "Can I work privately with you?" And he's like, "I can't afford you." He goes, "I only get reimbursed this much for this case, and I can't pay you out of that." And then with the way being independent is right now, the old model as opposed to your model, it's almost cost prohibitive. I mean, you can't wait 18 months on a reimbursement that may only be $67.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
it could be a big, long, complicated case, and you're needed there, and then that's your reimbursement. I mean,
What so, to add on to that, what would you say to the listener that's listening right now and thinking, "This sounds too good to be true?" And we know what that
exactly.
means. It probably
Right.
is.
Yeah.
I mean,
There's
it
a
sounds
catch
too good to be
somewhere.
true. There's gotta be a catch.
We went through that. Obviously, now that we've been in business now for going on 2 years, we got a ton of that in the beginning before we had a single provider. And every time we would, pitch this, a provider would go, too good to be true. We have figured out a model that allows providers to be paid what they deserve.
Mhm.
Yes, we're giving you your front end of what you guys are experiencing as providers working with us. The back end is not as smooth, obviously. There's now it's our responsibility to negotiate with insurance companies, to litigate if we have to litigate, to negotiate like our life depends on it, which the longevity of the company does. So yes, and that is the purpose of how we design this company is on the interface between All Stars and the provider should be really smooth. You guys have been as a profession not taken advantage of but undervalued companies by
Mhm.
using our model, and because we're physician owned and we bill as a large entity, not as a single provider, we take a little bit of the power back on the side where it belongs. At least that's what we believe, because we're not
Mhm.
insurance companies, to the provider. And that allows us to fight on your behalf with the power of 250 other providers behind you. Not that you're alone fighting this battle. So on the surface, it looks like it's too good to be true because of what providers have been dealing with. Unfortunately, whether you're CSFA, LSA, it doesn't matter what letters are after your name. Everyone's dealing with these same issues. Are complicated or different depending on your credential, but ultimately we give you the ability to fight as a big group. We're just cohesive about it. And again, a little bit about my background again that falls into line with this is that beyond being a sales guy, I ran a medical practice for the last 5 years where we kind of employed this type of model and this way to negotiate. So while we've been around for 2 years or almost 2 years, I've been working on this type of billing model now going on 6 years. So it's really tried and true of the way we deal with insurance companies. Again, we have a method to our what appears to be madness, I guess, to some because of how well we pay and how quick we can pay. But I assure every provider that gets in our business plan, we know we're going to take some losses on our end. But again, there's no recourse to the provider. When I pay you, it's what I pay you. We don't claw you back. In your contract, the agreement that you as a provider sign with us, that we won't come after you if the insurance company claws back. We believe in our billing model. We believe in our ability to negotiate. We believe in our back end team to do that negotiation. And that allows us to have built out this model to providers.
Yeah, when people say it's too good to be true, we first is, again, put them in touch with other providers, have used our service, have gone back and forth, have met us in the flesh, and that usually alleviates any heartburn. Then the next thing is, the next question they ask, well, why can't I just do this myself? Right? And I'm like, and today's is just, you can try, but you need to build out a billing team, coders. You need to have lawyers. You need to have this whole ecosystem. You need to have this app. This app didn't cost $1 to make. Like, to make your life simple, you would have, or to be able to have all the same accoutrements that we have. It's starting a business. So do you want to scrub cases and help people, or do you want to build this big business that we've kind of already built out? And then, then you need a lot of cash up front, because we're able to get the provider what they need without them having to manually build out all the infrastructure that we did. That's at home, is that we did that. And then when we were game ready, that's when we came to market.
So it's a testament to the adage, there's power in numbers.
Big
Essentially.
time.
Exactly.
I mean, that you're the Army National Guard to our small town police force.
And we're negotiating with an insurance company. They're the biggest of the big dogs, right? Yet much bigger than a Blue Cross Blue Shield. They're a nationwide organization. They make med device companies look small, that Lou and I both worked for, which were huge companies.
Right.
So in order to do that, it's why hospitals tend to get the best rates. It's why hospitals have generally can have really good reimbursement, is because their volume. And that's essentially what we were able to kind of replicate on a First Assist model, because we're a medical practice.
Right.
That's the power that we're taking back, which is really the key in all of this.
That makes sense. It is the key. And I think it's the key difference, and important for our listeners to understand, so that when they're thinking, this is too good to be true, there's something is not adding up, that's important to know. It's a different model. I mean, you're a medical practice. There's power in numbers when represented to the insurance companies, because that's just how it's done. I've been in the field long enough to know and have seen the back end of coding and billing and worked for enough offices and whatnot, that it's I hate to say it's a game, but it is. I mean, it's kind of, it's always a negotiation. The insurance companies don't want to come off any money, and nobody wants any money.
Yep.
Yeah, I often challenge the First Assist and say, hey, is your institution or is your employer making money off you? And often they'll say, yeah, I'm busting my butt. I'm in X, Y, and Z cases. I have this many RVUs, if they know that, but that doesn't mean that they're billing and collecting on that. They're typically chasing the surgeon's piece of the pie because it's bigger.
Right.
And that's just kind of the way the institutions are set up. And they don't know about certain modifiers that may need to be on yours. They don't extra documentation that our app is
so many things. Yeah.
So if the institution were to share, when we'd argue 90% of the time they're losing money on you guys, because they're not billing and collecting appropriately. There's nobody really looking at it. I'd argue a lot of these places aren't even billing and collecting appropriately. Right? So, I had a surgeon friend of mine call me, say that he did this case, and he put in 5 codes. And then a couple months later, he checked it, and there was only 3 codes. And he was like, I put in 5 codes. When the institution changed it, because they said, oh, well, if we put these 3 codes, we know we get X amount of dollars in this amount of time. He said, but I don't care about that. I did 5 codes. And they're like, we don't know what we're going to get for those 5 codes and how long it's going to be delayed. But if you just submit the 3, we're going to get this and move on. So it-
Wow.
Yeah.
some
So
little
they're taking what they can get,
yeah, it's
and
crazy.
it's probably low. It's probably way lower than what it could be.
And
Yeah.
I think this coding thing is really now that we're on the coding topic. When a first assist provider bills, we only bill what is submitted to us, and what is submitted to us is typically what the surgeon is billing. So a
Mm.
first assist reimbursement is married to what the surgeon is
Dead.
billing. So if
Right.
themselves or whoever's coding for them codes it light or codes it heavy or appropriate or not appropriately, ultimately we bill whatever the surgeon bills. So I think that's key in a lot of these reimbursement talk is if the right codes are billed, then that for what the effort you and the surgeon did during surgery. Like somebody again approached me and was like, "Hey, I was in a 10-hour surgery. I get one code back
Mm.
for a big abdominal case." I'm like, "I'm positive." Even reading the op note, which I can't change it on my own because it's coded wrong. So what we'll do is, because this is a partnership, we'll go back to the provider, say, "Hey, when we read this, we think that there's a couple more codes that should have been added. Can you approach your doc and say, hey, did you add something or am I missing something?" And a lot of the time, either a code was missed, somebody reread it, and it ends up getting fixed, and is the surgeon wins and you win because the first assist gets a percent of the primary surgeon bill, so it's the same codes with modifiers on it for first assist.
Does
I've
it
got
make a I'm sorry, John.
No, go ahead.
You want hold yours? Hold yours. I want to be first. Does it make a difference if the surgeon's employed by the hospital or not?
Nope.
No. Okay.
Yeah, they can be independent, employed,
Okay.
private practice. The
All right.
facility needs to accept insurance. It's the only caveat.
Right. Okay. John, what were you going to say?
Oh, and I was going to ask a couple of questions. Two of them are difficult questions, but one of them is, and I've talked to OR directors, like, are you billing for surgical first assistance? And well, it's kind of included in the OR fee itself. And I'm like, well, you're missing out. You're leaving money on the table, but it goes right over their heads. And the other question, a couple of questions I had, one of them is like, if a surgical, let's say I decided to work with your company, do the surgeons that I assist have to sign on with your company or anything like that? So they have no visibility or no interaction with your company at all. It's strictly you and I and the insurance.
So there's a few things that are generated when a case is done. The hospital will bill their own separate bill with some of the same codes the surgeon does, but they have other codes that they also can bill for, like if there's implants, right? The surgeon doesn't, they bill for putting in the implants, but not the cost of the implants themselves,
Right.
where the surgeon does the work. So the facility has a whole separate subset of codes in addition to some of the similar ones the surgeon bills. The
Okay.
surgeon and us have no relationship. Our relationship is with you, and your relationship is with them.
Okay.
Nor does your bill or how we bill for you, because we're a medical practice, affect their reimbursement at all. Their bill is completely independent from your. It's independent in terms of the submission. It's tied
Right.
by
Right.
patient identifiers and by the code similarity.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Your codes, again, are the same as theirs with a modifier for being a first assist in the case. That's how the insurance companies differentiate the two.
Great.
But again, the surgeon does what they do. They have available first assist. Hopefully it's somebody listening to this podcast and on your behalf. And again, we bill under your provider NPI number because you were the provider in the room. It's our tax ID. Like our practice is what some people call like a type 2 NPI, but our practice tax ID and identifiers is what's listed on the bill. Your name is on
Okay.
there because you perform the services, but it all starts with the company.
Wonderful. And then I have a couple of difficult questions I need to ask, but yeah, my personal belief is, and this is, I hate to bring my own personal beliefs into this, but I think health insurance companies have to be the most evil institution on earth. I mean, they collect all the money. You have no say in when you pay them, but if you're a provider, they don't reimburse it. The patient doesn't benefit either way, nor does the surgeon. David mentioned on our podcast that surgeons are still billing what they basically billed in the 90s, and they're only collecting 19% on that. And that's disgusting. They're keeping the lion's share for themselves when it should be to help the patient. But now I'm done with that rant. But so the two difficult questions I want to ask are, first, if we work with your company, do you ask us to sign a non-compete clause?
No.
Oh, cool. Excellent. And then the second one, and I hate to even speak this into existence, but what's to stop the insurance companies from not paying you? Like what business assistants who bill on their own right now, they have to go through that whole rigmarole of appeals and this and that. And their basic first thing is to deny you and not pay you. And that's what we've been suffering for all these years. And now you've come along, which to me is a game changer. But what's to prevent the insurance company from a year from now saying, nope, denied?
So I would say to continue on that non-compete piece is if you wanted to take 10 cases and work with All Stars that month, great. We're appreciative. If you want to take 10 cases and bill them with Mediri, that's your right. You're an independent practitioner,
Okay.
and some people, like you said, some may try to bill out of their own house, so they may use certain codes. We've come across providers that have all kinds of algorithms on which codes they do what with, or certain insurances that they feel they're more successful with. So we're here to support you. We're happy to take whatever cases can make sense for our partnership, but by no means is there any kind of quota. Is there any kind of non-compete? Anything like that. So some months you might be busy, other months you might be slow. You might have traveled. We can't say, "Hey, where you been? Why don't you have 20 more cases in?" I mean,
Right.
that's not what we're here to do. And then I guess what was the other question?
About the insurance companies then eventually just
Insurance company.
denying it.
Yeah, we get some. I mean, I'll let Dan answer, but we get some zero pays sometimes and stomach. But typically, we get very light payments, and then we're able to try to negotiate that out later with the insurance company again because of the volume. Just we're dealing with hundreds and thousands of cases, and we're beginning to just get on the radar of these big companies. So,
And
their
on the
strength
back
in
end,
numbers
again, I'm
that
sorry,
Kelly
you
talked
have
about.
you have the professionals that's their area of expertise is mitigating or litigating, I should say, and really go and
harassing.
fight
Yeah. If
whatever
we-
you want to
If
call
we
it.
have
Yeah.
to,
Yeah,
the goal is
Right.
to be able to
but just
talk through this negotiation and
dog, so to speak.
yeah,
Yeah.
you get some insurance companies that are good with negotiating, you get some that aren't, and they do it again, you're 100% right. They do it not to pay a job. It's All Stars' job to get them to
Mhm.
pay. And
Yeah.
obviously we have our tactics to negotiate with them. We have our tactics to get them to pay when they don't want to, when they're
Mhm.
legally obligated to, and we pull each thing out of our bag as we need it. And
That's great.
I'll reiterate, that's the full benefit of All Star. You're
Right.
right. If you build on your own, like Lou said, that fall and you're allowed to, absolutely. From send one case, send 1,000 cases. I'm
Right.
grateful for working with us. The truth there, but that's what you have to deal with if you do it on your own, or you can take a guaranteed, well-paying opportunity, and we'll deal with the BS on the background and on the back end. And again, we have a full-fledged, built-out team that does that,
Okay.
and you get that
That's
with working with
wonderful.
All Stars. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
that
very
that
exciting.
is
It's very
fantastic.
exciting, and
Yep.
I really hope that our listeners have listened to this, and I hope that you're excited. And we always encourage our listeners to ask questions or comment on the platforms that we're on, Spotify and YouTube and all those things, and we try to keep up with interacting with people. But I know this is going to be hugely informative, and you may have listened and think, "Oh, I've got more questions," and hopefully we'll have people on. But I think you guys have covered everything great, and between
Yes.
this episode and Dave for sure,
Yeah.
enough to at least generate some interest and people will know have some starting points, including myself. I'm excited the possibilities that this could open up for us.
And please,
Yeah,
in the
exactly.
description of the
The
episode,
podcast description.
yeah, feel free to leave. We have like an info at All Stars.
Oh, we do. I'll
Okay.
put the link to your
Yeah.
website. I'll put your
And
email
even
address.
the
Anything you'll let me
info email
I will.
address, people could reach
We
right
sure
out to us,
will.
obviously, and we'd love to continue to join you. And if if any listeners write in questions and want to know more, we could do a Q&A session. We're really
Great.
an open
Yeah.
book, and we really strive to be 100% transparent about that we do and how we do it and why we do what we do.
Oh.
There's nothing to hide, and I think
Right.
this is kind of something healthcare has lost a little bit. What
Mhm.
happens in the back
agree.
room in healthcare, and we really wanted to make it super transparent. So answer, and hopefully you could hear that and see that by listening to us. Like, there's nothing about our method, like Lou has mentioned, that a provider couldn't attempt to do on their own, and that's kind of how we like it. Is that everything we do is out in the open,
Yeah.
and you know exactly what you're going to get, when you're going to get it. And if there's any
Yeah.
questions, we're directly accessible. I mean, it's 9:35 on the East Coast right now. We're accessible 24/7 basically to get you an answer to your questions. If you're up, we're up.
That's great. And I know because you mentioned that you guys aren't a staffing company, so you don't have to deal with things like non-compete clauses and stuff like that. And I've talked to a lot of friends. I have friends that say, I just work for a hospital because I don't want to deal with billing and all that. And so, but I know you mentioned, and I will put a link to your website and I will put your email address, anything you want me to put in there, allow me to put in there, I'll put. But for people who are listening, let's say, and are driving or at the gym or whatever, and can't read the description, do you want to just give us your email address or your web address?
Sure. It's the easiest email address to email is info@allstars, plural, surgical.com. And that's the same as our website, allstars, plural, surgical.com. And if you want to hit Lou directly, it's lou@allstarsurgical.com.
Yeah, Lou is LOU at allstarsurgical.com. So it's just two S's back to back there between
Mm-hmm.
our surgical. But yeah, we're happy to meet with people, and I think we want to provide education, partner with national organizations. We want to, we want all these people doing good work in all these states to be licensed, credentialed, to get the respect they want. And I think that's ultimately something to tease for the future episodes here. That we'll have the bandwidth and we'll have the volume of providers that literally getting into the political realm, helping lobby.
That's a whole other episode.
Right.
Legislation.
But it starts with education, though. And it starts with
Yes.
education, and it starts with meetings and kind of getting organized and some of that stuff. And I think as a company, All Stars is behind that. And I think that could be fun as the years go on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I'm excited on two levels. One, for our profession because of All Stars, but also for us at our podcast, because if you're willing to keep coming onto our podcast, I have a whole bunch of ideas on what I'd like to bring. Well, it's education piece. It's talking us through the whole process of getting started. But just to add my 2 cents, I mean, I met with you two gentlemen. You happen to be in my hometown liaising with a surgeon. And we met ahead of time to talk about maybe interview you guys on our podcast. And I would not have guessed, if I'd have met you guys anywhere, I would not have guessed that you were in device sales at all. And you're genuine people, though. I've met you. You're not full of shit, pardon my expression. You're not trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. You're not trying to scam people. You are genuinely nice guys. That was my impression when I met you guys. That's why I've been eager to get this podcast done so we can get this out there to more people. And I want to see this whole paradigm in surgical first assisting in our country shift to more independence with you guys and your model, allowing everybody to have a good work-life balance. Because not only will this increase our profession, because maybe surgical techs or other people will say, hey, I want to be a first assistant because I want to assist this doctor all the time and I want to do this. And we're not talking about getting rich, but we're talking about getting paid what we're worth. So I just think it's fantastic. I just can't thank you guys enough for coming on our podcast. And if it's possible, I'd like to maybe get a surgical first assistant that was working and then maybe came on with your company, interview them. If maybe you can give us some ideas of anybody who will be interviewed on the podcast so we can get it from their perspective of what it was like before and after All Stars.
We'd love to.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're grateful for you guys. So thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, this is what this profession needs, are advocates like the two of you that go out there and find unique people to talk to and get the word out. And we've actually heard from a couple of our providers that they listened to this podcast and they heard David on, because we obviously have a lot of overlapping providers, and I was just super excited to tell them that we were going to be on. So it's been awesome, and we're excited to come back and join you again.
Thank you.
Well, we appreciate y'all again. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you so much.
And we'll circle back and be announcing any upcoming episodes with everybody. And our listeners, we do, and thanks for listening. And as usual, we hope to always bring you relevant information and about our profession and keep you in the loop about some things. And again, we have lots of things in the pipeline. We've both just been really, really busy. We've got lots of exciting episodes planned. So just keep listening and tell others about us.
Great.
Help the show grow, as we say.
Exactly. And just leave your questions if you have them. And we'll look forward to seeing you on the next podcast. So thanks again, guys.
Yep. Bye.
Thank you for joining us today. We invite you to like, comment, and subscribe to our podcast. Feel free to look us up on Facebook at The Surgical Assistant Podcast. If you like, you can also email us at thesurgicalassistantpodcast@gmail.com. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Content of this podcast is created for surgical assistants and is educational only. It is not intended to diagnose, treat, or offer medical advice on surgical conditions. No patient-specific information is shared, and all HIPAA guidelines will be adhered to.